2, 1.
An extensive survey of Yale's incoming freshman class has found that the class of 2022 will be, quote, the most diverse in university history. There'll be 5% homosexual, 9% bisexual or transsexual, 8% asexual, and 3% unwilling to answer the question, which sounds pretty coy sexual to me. Also, they're all leftists. We will analyze the increasingly homogenous diversity on campus and what can be done about it. Then, speaking of diversity, the Dalai Lama defends nationalism in Europe. Drink up, folks. And Twitter bans old speak. Finally, the mailbag. I'm Michael Knowles, and this is The Michael Knowles Show. By the way, I'd like to make a correction. I'm sorry. How insensitive of me. I used the word freshman to describe the incoming class. Obviously, freshman is a sexist term, so I should say fresh person. Well, except, of course, that son is a sexist term, too. So I guess it should be fresh per daughter. The Yale fresh per daughter class. We'll analyze the incoming fresh per daughter class. But first, I've got to thank our sponsor at Thrive Market. Oh, Thrive is really good. Thrive is, I'm a man of simple tastes. I'm easily satisfied by the best. Thrive Market will give you the best. Go there right now, thrivemarket.com/Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Thrive Market is a revolutionary online marketplace on a mission to make healthy living easy and affordable for everyone. You can shop for thousands of the best-selling non-GMO foods and natural products, always at 25 to 50% below traditional retail prices. The reason I wouldn't buy all that really good quality food in the past is because I'm a cheapskate. So especially when I was a bachelor, I would just, eat whatever muck out of the gutter that I could find. But when you can get it at a really good price, because Thrive Market sells directly to you, you'll get the highest quality ingredients at even more affordable prices than the current premium products carried everywhere. So you get non-GMO food, snacks, vitamins, all that stuff. I love their olive oil. I use a ton of their stuff. I use them all the time, but especially their olive oil is really, really good. You will love it. More than 70% of the Thrive Market catalog can't be found on Amazon. Right now, get 60% of free organic groceries, plus free shipping and a 30-day trial. So, hey, look, you'll get some free groceries. That's pretty good, man. You do it now, you'd be a fool not to. You get $20 off your first 3 orders of $49 or more, plus free shipping. Most shoppers will spend more than that anyway because they have such good stuff. So you will automatically get back $20. So your total purchase becomes $30 per deal. You get this deal 3 times in a row. ThriveMarket.com/Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Get instant $60 of free groceries. ThriveMarket.com/Michael. Okay, we've got a ton of stuff to get to today, so we got to get right into it. A lot of chakras are going out of alignment today. Do you hear it happening? All the crystals in the chakras just going out. A lot of people, they were doing their sun salutations. Now they're doing downward facing dog because the Dalai Lama is defending nationalism in Europe. This is a beautiful thing. It's one of those news stories where, do I care what the Dalai Lama says? Not really. Do I even care that much about what's going on in European politics? Not really. But when these things line up like this, it is just too good because every little hippy-dippy, unshowered, wild-haired weirdo walking around Los Angeles with their Bernie bumper stickers on is now going to be very upset. They all do yoga. Yoga has become the church of millennials, and the Dalai Lama defending nationalism, which makes perfect sense. He probably was listening to our show yesterday, and that's why he did it, because we've been talking about nationalism now for a couple of days. And by the way, I don't know if the Dalai Lama is looking for a new job, but my own church, the Catholic Church, could use some new bishops, and it sounds like this guy is at least right about a few things, so maybe consider applying. The Dalai Lama was at a conference in Sweden yesterday. This was 3 days after the right-wing party in Sweden, which is called the Sweden Democrats. I see why that's confusing, but they're the right-wing party there. They did very well in the general elections. And so he was speaking in Sweden. And I think the left was expecting him to say, look, reject right-wing politics. Open borders, man, come on. Let's all, kumbaya. But he didn't say that. He said, quote, Europe belongs to the Europeans. Receive them, help them, educate them, but ultimately they should develop their own country with regard to the Islamic refugees, the immigrants who are over there. Europe belongs to the Europeans. This is a truism. This shouldn't be a controversial statement. Of course that's true. Europe belongs to the Europeans. America belongs to the Americans. China belongs to the Chinese. That is the definition of the nation. But now to say that is controversial. It's seen as racist. I don't know how it's racist. There are a lot of different races in Europe, but somehow that's considered racist now because you have floods and floods of Islamic migrants coming across borders in Europe and flooding these countries, in many cases invading these countries with the protection of the European Union, with the encouragement of the European Union. There was that great book on it, The Strange Death of Europe, by Douglas Murray. I think it came out a little while ago. Excellent book on this topic. Talks about whole Italian towns being overrun by Islamic migrants coming across borders. And what the Dalai Lama is defending here is the right of European nations to remain European nations. I get why the left is surprised by this, because the Dalai Lama is a cool, like, hippy-dippy guy. If anybody's going to be a nationalist, it's going to be the Dalai Lama. He has been fighting for the right of the nation of Tibet against the imperial encroachments of China for all of our lifetimes. He went on, he said, quote, "I think Europe belongs to the Europeans. They ultimately should rebuild their own country." And he said, by the way, this wasn't just a reaction to Trump. It's not like he is playing some political game and he's saying, oh, I see Trump is popular, okay, I'll mimic him. In 2016, before Donald Trump was elected, the Dalai Lama said, quote, "Europe, for example, Germany, cannot become an Arab country. Germany is Germany. There are so many that in practice it becomes difficult, meaning there are so many migrants coming across the border." He said, as we all feel, when we look into the face of every single refugee, especially the children and women, we can feel their suffering. And therefore, we should help them. Of course, we should help them. The goal, however, should be that they return and help rebuild their countries. End quote. That, again, should not be controversial. When we're talking about refugees, why would we have refugees come over from a totally foreign region of the world to a totally foreign region of the world, rather than people within their own neighborhoods helping to take care of them? Why wouldn't we want to rebuild those countries? Perhaps there is a problem in certain cultures there. Perhaps there are conflicts among cultures over there. Why would we import wholesale, unvetted, those sort of cultural problems? This is this used to be a progressive position. This used to be accepted by the left and the right, because in the old days you had imperialism, and then in the wake of the Second World War, we had a surge of nationalism. India becomes a nation. The countries in the Middle East get to become their own nations. Countries in Africa. This was the height of freedom, because the nation can protect liberty for individuals, for communities, for different groups, without descending into anarchy on the one hand or becoming oppressive and imperial on the other hand. So I understand that the orthodoxy of the left right now is that we need to become one world government under a totally benevolent empire. Oh, it'll be different this time. It'll be totally benevolent. But perhaps the left should look to some of the people that for a long time it's admired, like Dalai Lama, to see where they've gone so wrong. And in the meantime, we can fill up our leftist tears. So the Dalai Lama is on one side of that. Twitter is now on the other. Twitter banned the phrase in its advertising platform. It banned the phrase illegal alien, because that's hate speech. That's hateful content now. You can't say illegal alien. Illegal alien is not a hateful phrase. Illegal alien is the precise technical term for illegal aliens. All the other things are euphemisms. Dreamer, undocumented future, whatever, those are euphemisms that don't precisely describe what we're talking about. Illegal alien does, but Twitter doesn't care. Jack Dorsey, the head of Twitter, basically admitted to shadow banning 600,000 accounts. Because Twitter is an international company. It views itself as an international company. It doesn't have bonds of national loyalty. When the right and the left at various points complain about multinational corporations, they do have one point, which is that these supranational, extra transnational organizations don't have the same priorities that you and I do, because they don't have loyalty to communities and to states and to countries. They're bigger than that. And this brings us to the Yale of it all, because Yale calls itself, even in recent years, even when I was there, they call it themselves a global university. Not an American university, a global university. The catchphrase for Yale used to be for God, for country, and for Yale, in that order. But now that is not the case. Now it is an international university. It touts all the time how many foreign international students are coming in there, and it's always trying to increase that number, in part because they pay a lot of money to go. And there was a magazine when I was there, I think it still exists, it's called the Yale Globalist. That was the very fashionable magazine to write for as an undergraduate. And now they talk about the most diverse class ever. And you say, oh, good. Oh, thank goodness, because all I'm hearing is this one point of view, this one perspective. The global university, the globalist, the left-wing progressive. Oh, good. Now we have some diversity. What diversity do we get? So when it comes to sexual diversity, the old line at Yale was 1 in 4, maybe more, for gay students. And now the numbers are almost exactly that in terms of students who are not straight, students who have more creative sexual preferences. The number actually is close to 1 in 4. This is no surprise. This has gone on a long time. You know, Yale did turn out Cole Porter. I think American Psycho said that Yale thing is when you have either repressed homosexuality or a cocaine addiction. Maybe both, I don't know. But when you get down to intellectual diversity, ideological, philosophical diversity, this wide-ranging study found that just 9% of Yale incoming students consider themselves somewhat conservative, and just 2% consider themselves very conservative. And let me translate that for you, being familiar with how this goes. Somewhat conservative at Yale means that you don't think that Mitt Romney is Hitler. That's what somewhat conservative means. Very conservative means, I don't know, that you registered as a Republican at 18. I think that probably counts. You know, you have some, you have an American flag bow tie or something. That's like very, very conservative. And so we're talking about 2% of pretty serious conservatives there. There is very little intellectual diversity. Same thing on the faculty. I saw some conservative faculty members or would-be faculty members get run out of town. A 2016 survey by the Yale Daily News shows that 95% of conservative students felt that their views were unwelcome at Yale. And I don't want to beat up on Yale too much, but the reason that this is a national story is that Yale is representative not just of some school in New Haven, but of all of these campuses across the country, with very few exceptions. They're all being overrun by the left. They're all indoctrinating rather than educating to increasing degrees. And we've got to find a way to stop this. You remember, you know, the craziness that kind of typified the craziness on all campuses, but it really was most prevalent, I think, at dear old New Haven, was Shrieking Girl, that came out a few years ago, just to refresh your memory, and because I need a little refill on my Tumblr. Take it away, Shrieking Girl, Gerald Luther.
Be quiet! For all Stillman students. You understand that? As your position as master, it is your job to create a place of comfort and home for the students that live in Stillman. You have not done that. By sending out that email, that goes against your position as master. Do you understand that? Then
no, I don't agree with that.
Then why the f did you accept the position?
Because
Who
I have
the f hired you?
I have a different
You
vision
should
than you.
step down! If that is what you think about being a master, you should step down! It is not about creating an intellectual space! It is not! Do you understand that? It's about creating a home here! You are not doing that!
You're supposed to be
going
our
against
advocate!
that.
My favorite part of this video is it's a very distressing video, but my favorite part is that guy at the end, the advocate guy, because you know he was just standing there, everyone's yelling, everyone's trying, he's like, all right, Johnny, this is your chance. This is your chance to finally, what am I, I'll say, yeah, that he was supposed to be our advocate. All right, everyone's talking. All right, here, you were supposed to be our advocate. Nobody's talking anymore. Oh, it's so embarrassing, so awkward. And this girl should have been expelled, right? Geraldine Luther should have been expelled for this. It is so horrifically disrespectful. All of the students involved screaming at their professor should have been expelled on the spot. What happened? Instead, the students who led this revolt on campus were given awards at their graduation. They were given awards. This is a really horrifying turn of events. You're seeing the American university, not just at Yale, but all around the country, imploding. And we're very lucky because there is a guy who is running for the Yale Board of Trustees on a campaign to turn this around, to make sure that events like this never happen again, not at Yale. And hopefully this can be a signal to all of the universities around the country to stop this. Jamie Kirchick is an American reporter, foreign correspondent, candidate for the Yale Board of Trustees. I spoke to him last week. Here's Jamie. Jamie, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jamie, obviously I feel a personal connection to your campaign because you're running for the Yale Corporation, for the Yale Board of Trustees. But I think your campaign and the issues you're talking about actually reflect a national trend that's going on colleges, that's going on at universities across the country. Why are you running for the Yale Board of Trustees?
Well, like you say, I think our universities play a major role in educating future leaders, in Yale in particular, in the Ivy League. And a lot of the ideas that come out of universities or that become popular in universities eventually seep their way into the general public. And I think over the past couple of years, we've seen at Yale and many other universities growing intolerance for differing viewpoints, and not necessarily conservative viewpoints, by the way. I mean, the clip that you just showed, it wasn't a right-wing professor being yelled at. It was a quite liberal one. So things are, I think, getting out of hand. Just 2 weeks ago, we had this huge, or last week, excuse me, this huge controversy with the New Yorker canceling an interview with Steve Bannon. I'm no fan of Steve Bannon. I've criticized him many times in print, but to pretend that, he or his ideas, don't exist and that they're not influential and they actually haven't been used to win elections in major countries across the Western world. From a left-wing perspective, I don't see how that actually helps you to just sort of put your fingers in your ears and pretend that these things don't exist and wish them to go away. So I've been really disappointed at what I see as a kind of climate of growing intellectual intolerance on the Yale campus in particular, but also across the country. And I think that, alumni of these institutions really need to try to exercise some more influence, because they're really the only they're the only constituency of the university that I think has any chance of fixing this.
That's absolutely right. A few years ago, when we saw that clip from Yale of the girl, this is not an intellectual space. This is not, it's a home, and, shrieking profanity at her professor. You've seen this happen so many other places as well. One thing I love about your candidacy is that you're not some rock-ribbed conservative. I don't think you're a hardline Republican in your own work. And yet you're reflective of this view now in the center and among independents and reasonable-minded people that even if I disagree with speech, we should permit free speech, especially on a campus.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm probably center, maybe vaguely center-right politically. I voted for Hillary Clinton. I endorsed her, just to give your listeners an idea.
We'll forgive you
I've
for
lived
that.
overseas. I've lived overseas. I've lived in, other democratic countries that don't have the same culture of free speech that the United States does. And I've really just come to appreciate how lucky we are. And of course, do we hear things that we don't like? Absolutely. Alex Jones is sort of the cost of free speech. It's the crazy homeless guy, shouting, curses at you as you go to work. But you have to put up with that. You can't just put the homeless guy in prison for screaming something that you don't like. And so I really am an absolutist when it comes to this. I think it's the small L liberal position. I think it's a position that, frankly, throughout history, it's usually been people on the left whose free speech has been quashed. I mean, if you go back to, the Palmer raids around World War I, McCarthyism, the various, very controversial art exhibitions that were put up during the 80s and 90s. It's usually people on the left, but now I think that the left has basically come to dominate the media, academia, cultural institutions. They've now come to dominate these institutions. They are now in absolute total control. And it's just unfortunate to see that they haven't really learned the lessons that, when they were in need of people to defend their free speech, they're now completely flipped.
That's exactly right.
And they're going after anyone. Yeah.
Well, if a university doesn't have the free exchange of ideas, then where is going to have a free exchange of ideas? I'm sure people are looking at your candidacy and they're saying, what can we do? What can we do to help bring the universities and liberal education back from the brink? So my question has two parts. One, what will you do when you're on the Yale Corporation board? And what can other people do who are alumni of other universities or who are at other universities to try to stop all the censorship, stop the screaming, stop the degradation of the liberal education culture, and actually reclaim the free exchange of ideas?
I think the universities need to stop putting up basically kick me signs on their backs. And they need to make it very clear. The administrators need to make it very clear to incoming freshmen, these are our values. We believe in free speech. You're not going to be shouting down speakers. And so there's a very excellent letter that was, written by, I believe, the Dean of Students at the University of Chicago. And it was sent out to every incoming freshman. And it's very, it's very blunt. And it says there's no trigger warnings. There's no safe spaces. This is a place for intellectual development and debate. And so I think students coming to Chicago, they already understand this. And if they really don't like it, then they're not going to go to Chicago. And so I really would like to see if I'm elected to the board, I would urge the president of Yale, the dean of students, to send out similar letters. Yale actually has an excellent policy known as the Woodward Report. It was published in 1974 after some very high-profile controversial speakers and riots grew up around that. The university commissioned this report, and it's really looked and cited upon as being one of the best expressions in defense of free speech in an academic setting. I would send that to every incoming freshman. Perhaps there's a program that Princeton has where they assign all the incoming freshmen 2 books that are basically, pro and con on a very contentious subject, like abortion, say, a book that's in favor of abortion rights and one that is against it. And all the incoming freshmen, no matter what they're majoring in, even if they're going to be majoring in, astronomy or whatever, they have to read these books, and there'll be a classroom discussion about it, just to sort of get them in the mood and to inculcate these values. So those are some of the ideas that I've brought forth. And then, for me personally, I'd love it if your listeners, if they know people who went to Yale, if they did go to Yale, go to the website, jamiefortrustee.com. They can sign my petition to get me on the ballot. And I would just encourage people, most universities, they have similar bodies like the Yale Corporation. They have boards of trustees, they have governing bodies on which alumni sit and play a role. So that's, do what I'm doing, run to be on the board of trustees. You can also, frankly, put your money where your mouth is. And if the university that you are an alum of is not, behaving or not defending Enlightenment values like you want them to, then make it clear to the financial office, the giving office, that you're not going to be donating anymore. And that's ultimately what might have to happen in order for real serious positive change to take place.
That is such a good point. I love it when the fundraising committee calls me and they ask for my annual $20 that I donate to dear old Yale, and I say, no, you're not getting it this year. Shut down the programs, and I go on my long lecture, because you see this at a lot of institutions, even outside of education. You hear get woke, go broke. People are they don't want this oppressive, censorious politics of division shoved in their face all the time. And so I hope it's very important, if you do know anybody who went to Yale or is at Yale or whatever, make sure you go to jamiefortrustee.com, because I think this is going to send a message nationally. You mentioned UChicago. They had a great statement on free speech. Purdue University under Mitch Daniels had a great statement on free speech.
Yep.
And Yale is not living up to the Woodward Report. They're not defending free speech. So I wonder, when the right sort of lost any influence at all at universities, they started think tanks. There are other alternatives to traditional 4-year college degrees. Are we going to see a shift away? If the colleges remain totally opposed to free ideas, politicized, increasingly ideological majors, are we going to see some new competing form of education crop up, or are we consigned to just this left-wing malaise that's going to get worse and worse and more censorious as time goes on?
I think we're already seeing perhaps the early development of this. One, in sort of the formation of this heterodox academy and this whole intellectual dark web, and people are seeming to, there's clearly a lot of interest in this, and a lot of people are kind of becoming autodidacts, and they're educating themselves outside of the traditional university structures. The other development that I would say indicates that something that you suggest might be happening is we're seeing a lot of millennials, leave college with these very expensive 4-year degrees in various, very obscure subjects, and they're not getting jobs, and they're living with their parents. And I think it's eventually going to dawn on people that the educations that they're getting in some of these schools are just not marketable in a free society. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why millennials are increasingly attracted towards socialism, because they're not making this connection. They're not making this connection in their head. They feel very aggrieved and resentful that, the 4-year degree that they got in performative puppetry or whatever is not translating into a $100,000 a year job right out of school. And so rather than say, well, maybe I shouldn't have gotten this useless degree, perhaps I'm going to blame society. And I'm going to demand, socialism and free education and free this and free that. So I think we're already seeing sort of the the understanding that something is off. That Peter Thiel has referred to a higher education bubble. I think there is something like that going on, and if it's going to explode or how that's going to develop is anyone's guess.
Well, as a transformative puppetry minor, I have to tell you, the job market was really tough on me when I got out of dear old college. I noticed that you have...
You seem to have done well for yourself. But...
Yeah. Well, the key was that I didn't write a book. That was the one good idea I had. I noticed you have very strange looking wallpaper behind you. That's because you're coming to us from the middle of nowhere somewhere on the other side of the earth.
I'm at a conference in the nation of Georgia, not the U.S. state, which about 10 years ago, just last month, you'll remember, was invaded and occupied by Russia, 20% of its territory. So I come here every year for a conference. I think it's a great country, great people, freedom loving, very pro-American, very westward looking. And I always try to come to this conference every year to really remind myself what America's role in the world should be. So
what freedom means, more important now than ever before, perhaps. So Jamie, I'm going to let you go. I know it's about midnight over there where you are. So go keep it up. If you are a Yaley, know a Yaley, go to jamiefortrustee.com and help out. Try to spur similar campaigns at your college, at your university, because that's the only way we're going to restore some sanity to the campuses. Jamie, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we've got a lot more to get to. I'm finally leaving enough time to do the mailbag. I always don't leave enough time, and then there are like 5 minutes left and I speed through them, but I'm finally leaving enough time. So go to dailywire.com. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, I'm shocked to hear it. If you're on Daily Wire, thank you. You help us keep the lights on and Covfefe in my cup. Go over there. It's $10 a month, $100 for an annual membership. What do you get? What don't you get? What don't you get these days? You get me, you get the Andrew Klavan Show, you get the Ben Shapiro Show, you get the Matt Walsh Show, you get to ask questions in the mailbag, which is coming up. You get to ask questions in the conversation. The big boss, Ben Shapiro, is coming up this month, I believe, and none of that matters because you get this special Dalai Lama edition of Leftist Tears. He's causing them. He's not the one producing them. Do you remember, I think it was about 20 years ago when the Dalai Lama did a Rolex ad. He was wearing a Rolex or something. This is the new conspicuous consumption piece that you need. The Leftist Tears tumbler. We should do like a gold-plated one or something like that. Go get it. It's the only FDA-approved vessel of salty, delicious Leftist Tears, which we're going to get a lot of if Jamie wins the Board of Trustees, which is just a lovely thing. It's a lovely thing when sort of people in the center, liberals, center left, center right, when they are like considered to the right of Genghis Khan, which is the culture that we're in now. Excuse me, go to dailywire.com. We'll be right back with the mailbag.